Fish on Fridays. I'm Al McCauley. Today I want to talk to you about a remarkable priest who became a saint, and we remember him every year on September 9th. That's his feast day. I'm talking about Saint Peter Claver. He's going to die on September 8th, by the way, but September 8th is the feast of the birth of Mary, so the church is not going to give that up. She's the chief of all saints, if you will. So his feast day was shifted to the next day after he died, which would be September 9th. But St. Peter Claver was a remarkable man. He was born in 1581 and he became a Jesuit priest in 1610. And he is going to leave everything, his family, everything behind in Spain, from Spain, and he's going to travel to the New World. So you have to remember that this is just a few decades after the Spanish and the Portuguese have pretty much overtaken everything in Central and in South America. And he's going to land in a city of Cartagena in Colombia. And Cartagena is important because it became one of the chief hubs of the African slave trade to the New World. And so it was said that about 10,000 slaves were brought in from Africa annually to Cartagena alone. So it's just a remarkable number when you think about it. And so it was an important port city in that trade. And so Peter is going to go there and he's going to minister specifically to those slaves. And it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. When a slave ship would come into port, Peter would wait and he would go out to it, and he would, even before it docked sometimes, and he would go into the bowels of the ship and he would take things like food and medicine and things like lemons and oranges and limes. He would take fruit, because this journey from Africa, Western Africa to Colombia is going to take several weeks, a long time, upwards of 100 days in some cases. And so they didn't have fresh fruit. And so oftentimes scurvy and other diseases because of a deficiency of vitamin C was common. And so he would bring them citrus, and he would bring them bread, and and one of the things he brought was brandy, as a way to try to help keep them calm because of what they were going to experience. But he'd bring them medicine. He would bandage their wounds. He would go into the ships. If you can imagine the smell, the stench of the ships, and that didn't deter him. He recognized in these slaves their inherent human dignity. He recognized them as equals, as brothers. And so he went to work with them and went to serve them, oppressed though they were. He spoke out routinely against all the oppression that especially the Spanish were inflicting upon the slaves, the brutality that they experienced and the inhumane conditions. And so he spoke out against that. Obviously, the slave trade is going to continue to flourish even during his lifetime, but eventually it will subside and will become illegal. And boy, people like Peter Claver were really on the forefront in terms of helping others to recognize the human dignity of all people. He spent 40 years doing this, about 40 years of his life and in his ministry, serving slaves, serving people who were oppressed in this way. It's said that he was able to minister to and baptize almost 300,000 people, mostly slaves, because he would give them instruction. He would talk to them about their human dignity. He would talk to them about Christ and how Christ has saved them through his suffering, death, and resurrection. And so sometimes having mass baptisms. So when you see pictures or icons of Peter Claver, oftentimes he may be holding fruit because, again, he took that to the slaves. He's often pictured with slaves, African slaves. And sometimes he's pictured holding a shell, a seashell, because that would have been the typical tool or implement used to baptize new Christians. But I just love the idea of him going to meet the ships, to meet people where they're at. And that's what Christ did. He met people where they're at. He didn't say, when you get your act together, come back and talk to me. He went to people in their sinfulness. He went to their homes. He went to where they were and tried to transform them that way. And Peter Claver did the same thing. He went to where the slaves were and met them there in their human dignity. He's recognized today as the patron of a lot of things, obviously of Colombia. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Colombia recognizes him nationally as a hero, and September 9th every year is a holiday in that country. He's the patron saint of African missions and of interracial justice, things that we really need to be aware of in our own day and age. And there's a quote that's attributed to him that I'd like to end with. I just think it's just wonderful because it's a lesson for all of us. We don't have slavery like that today, at least not overt slavery like that, but we all come across people who we don't agree with or don't see eye to eye with, or who are oppressed by society for one reason or another. And I love this quote because I think it's something that we could all take to heart and take to prayer as a challenge to live this way. He said, we must speak to them. Who is the M in your life? Who's the other? Who is the person that's the outcast? We must speak to them with our hands by giving before we try to speak to them with our lips. In other words, we have to live it. We have to walk the walk before we talk the talk. Even as Christians, that's incumbent upon all of us, because if we don't do it, who will? We live in a world that's very fractured in a lot of ways, and it's dark, and we need to bring that light, like Peter Claver did, into the ships. We need to go where people are at, and we need to act it, live it, before we preach it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful. Please feel free to share this content if you'd like. We'd love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook. But either way, please keep tuning in every Friday for Fish on Fridays. Until next time, please be good to each other, and God bless.